Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Joining us now, Senator Mike Crapo with reaction analysis and just a thought about being everyone's All-American. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you, Kevin?
Good to have you with us. First of all, how you been?
Been doing well. You know, it's an interesting new Congress because we have a division between a political division between the House and the Senate we didn't have before. But we're still moving ahead aggressively on, I think, a very powerful agenda.
You know, Congressman, and those people that here in Idaho that know you, or maybe because of your national reputation, I'm just going to assume something and say this. I don't think you're happy unless you're working for the people. That's not cliche. You love to work, and when you come into town, you're not taking time off. You hit the road.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I really do. Often people say to me or ask me, what's the best part of your job? And I mean this sincerely. The best part of my job is that I get to meet with and work with people all over the state of Idaho from every walk of life on issues that are really important. And that's just really rewarding.
Senator, the State of the Union, we'll talk a little bit about that. But before we roll, it must have been, well, what went on in your mind when you saw Justice Gorsuch and Justice Kavanaugh sitting there? You voted for them. You are part of that contentious process to get Judge Kavanaugh through, now Justice Kavanaugh. Seeing two conservatives watching Kavanaugh's first State of the Union last night, your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting you should ask that because I did have a very strong reaction to that, and it was one of just really happiness, I guess you would say, because it was sort of symbolic to see them standing there knowing that they are going to protect the Constitution, they're going to support the rule of law and not be activist judges or justices. And what their confirmation to the court means is that the drift of the court away from strong constitutional principles has been stopped for probably several decades, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to continue as time moves forward to put more strong, conservative, really rules-oriented justices on the court.
Well, and that is so important, and we see an issue that you care so much about, life. Who would have ever thought that life would be debated so viciously as it has in the past couple months?
I think that most Americans did not see this coming. You know, we've had discussions about the right to life over the years, but never, at least not in my mind, never did the majority of Americans believe that the discussion would move to whether you could actually take the life of a baby after it was born. And, you know, to see us moving to where there's absolute opposition to even late-term abortion is, I think, a huge concern that people across the country are getting increasingly worried about.
Senator Mike Crapo joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Senator, first off, do you think there'll be another government shutdown? I know you and the Senate and the congressional delegation from Idaho and everybody else in the House working to avoid that. What's the mood right now, sir?
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say if I had to make odds on it, I would say the odds are in favor of not another government shutdown. That doesn't necessarily mean, however, that the odds are in favor of the gridlock being broken. It was very clear to me over the last week that Nancy Pelosi in particular, but Chuck Schumer and their respective caucuses continue to be absolutely adamant that they won't give any funding for the very things that they voted for recently to give the adequate security for construction of barriers at the border. If that happens, and if they absolutely refuse, I don't think that the president will concede on that, but I think that there's a real possibility he will look at other options to try to achieve the kind of security that he talked about so powerfully last night.
Senator, you've been in on these talks, whether it's the Judiciary Committee, both in public and out of sight, whether it's working on the budget, which we will get to. It's been a while since you and I have had a budget talk, which is so very important and so underreported. But behind the scenes, what's it like working with a Chuck Schumer or Harry Reid back in the day? We have that public persona. What's it like in the deal room?
Well, It's very interesting because on a personal level, we have good relations. We talk things through, but we're also both very candid with each other about our positions on the issues. And they're very clear right now that they just haven't got any room to compromise on some of these really critical things. It's not just the border security issues, but there is such a push on I guess you would call it the left wing or the more liberal side of their caucuses to oppose anything that President Trump wants or supports, that it comes down to we can't really talk policy or principles because it's just a matter of we can't do that. We can't in any way work with something that the president wants, and that's very discouraging to me.
Indeed. Senator Crapo here with us, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Before we get to the State of the Union, because we don't want to put this off, let's talk about the debt and the deficit. You've been working on this for years. You've told us over the years here, before Kevin Miller was here, any host on KIDO Talk Radio or across the state, this is a ticking time bomb. What is going on with the very latest concerning our debt and deficit situation, sir?
Well, we are seeing that the kind of things that you and I have talked about over the last few years, that is that our national debt is skyrocketing still, and we're seeing even worse debt issues. I should clarify, though, that many people are saying, oh, see, that shows that President Trump's not serious about dealing with the debt and that the tax policies aren't working and, so forth. The reality is that the reason that the debt is skyrocketing hasn't got anything to do with the tax reforms that we passed. Actually, the tax reforms that we passed are working, and the economy is actually growing much faster than was predicted under that. And the revenue that's coming into the federal government right now under the new tax policies is helping to keep the national debt from being even worse. It's still the explosion of our entitlement system and the absolute inability that we have here in Congress to break the gridlock and deal with the entitlement spending that is just growing at multiples of the rate of the economy and continuing to push us into very, very dangerous territory.
Well, when we speak about dangerous territory, we go back to what happened to the Greeks. We look at some of the other countries that have had their currency collapse. We always think that can't happen because we're the United States of America. What's the worst case scenario?
Well, the worst case scenario is that we get to a place where we were perilously close a few years ago, but we get to a place in which the pressure on our debt, on our budget and our economy is so strong from our debt that it raises risks in the world markets as to whether America is sufficiently strong economically to honor our debt instruments. It's a crisis in the bond market, if you will. And when that bond market crisis happens, if it does, then that's going to be economically very, very damaging to our country, and we'll see incredible recessionary impacts. And you'll recall, in order to avoid this, when it got close to that, and there was a lack of confidence in the U.S. government's ability to deal with its debt, the Federal Reserve started doing something called quantitative easing, which is basically printing money in order to buy our bonds in the bond market so that there would be a market for them. And it's that kind of dynamic that we've got to avoid as we move forward. We've got to reassure that America is strong. And that's another reason for the strong tax reforms that we made last year. Those were a very important part of building back the right kind of revenue posture in the United States to assure the rest of the world that we are addressing our debt crisis. We addressed the revenue side last Congress in a very powerful way. We still have to address the spending side, which we haven't done yet.
Senator Mike Crapo joining us, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Senator, you've been through a lot of State of the Unions. How did this one rank on the Senator Mike Crapo power meter?
It was very high. I thought that President Trump gave an outstanding speech. And just to give you my quick thumbnail thought about it, he started out and ended talking about how we need to work together and take the opportunity that we now have in front of us to even increasingly strengthen and build America. And he then talked about the successes of the last Congress in achieving these things, and there have been many, I'll go through them if you want, but many successes that I think is one of the most productive 2 years that we've had in seeking to find conservative solutions to some of our critical issues. And then he went through a sort of vision of what we need to address in America and what opportunities we need to seize. And then, again, came back to a very patriotic finish, I thought, asking all of us in Congress to put aside our differences and work towards solutions and to seize the opportunities that we have facing us right now.
Senator, we go to the border and the issue of life. You know, as we started this segment, who would have ever thought that this would be such a battleground when we're talking about pro-life and the president making a stand last night, something I don't think we've seen from any president.
Yeah, that's true. You know, I noticed in this morning's news clips that predictably the media from the left in our national media was saying that he was giving a strong speech that was not indicating any willingness to compromise. The reality is he held out his hand multiple times asking for us to break the gridlock, but he did take strong stands on critically important issues. That's what we want from our president. And I just think it's refreshing to see a president who will stand up in the face of this phenomenal pressure from the Never Trump movement, which includes significant parts of our national media, and just continue to say, I am going to fight for these things. I am going to fight for these things. I believe that's one of the reasons that he got elected, and I believe it's one of the reasons that his popularity in the country is very strong.
Senator Crapo, we had your close friend, Congressman Fulcher, on earlier. We always appreciate everybody from Idaho reporting to the folks. So this is once again where the bloviating hot air announcer shuts his mouth and invites you to speak directly to our friends here in Idaho. What would you say to them based on last night's speech and what the good work you're doing in Washington, sir?
Well, thank you for that opportunity. And what I think I'll do is go back to a comment I made earlier, and that is I think over the last 2 years, a tremendous amount of progress was made. And I think it should give people hope that we can start getting things right and start really making big differences. So what am I talking about? Well, I've already mentioned that the Supreme Court itself was probably enough for any single president in Congress in a 2-year term to get done. But those movements on the Supreme Court were phenomenally important. The tax reform, which, as you know, I've been fighting for since back before the Bull-Simpson days,
right,
that helped to strengthen our economy and make it so that Americans have a shot at the American dream rather than just being pushed down. The regulatory reform that we were able to achieve. You know, the Code of Federal Regulations was about 99,000 pages when President Trump took office, and it's now down in the 50 to 60,000 range, and we're working on it still. Major regulatory burdens which have been removed, which have unlocked a tremendous business activity, and the list goes on. Veterans reform to help our veterans, the opioid reforms that will help us deal with that crisis, and literally, I mean, I got a list 3 pages long of major legislation that we put through, and by the way, a tremendous part of that was on a bipartisan basis. So I just want to say to folks, the fight is on, but we're making progress on it, and I want people to not get discouraged from some of the constant assaulting that goes on against those, not only the president, but all of us who are fighting for right-of-center solutions to the kinds of problems that America faces.
Well, Senator, we appreciate you, and thank you for joining us so early. I know you've got to get back to the people's work. You have a great day, sir.
Thank you, Kevin. Great to visit with you.
Great to visit with you. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Our great friend, Senator Mike Crapo, with us. Okay, now it's time to hear from you. Now, if you thought we were just going to have pro State of the Union responses, well, it wouldn't be the Kevin Miller Show.
I'm optimistic optimistic about what the appropriators are doing. I'm an appropriator myself, as you know, where I was forged, and I do know left to their own devices, they weigh the equities, they understand the resources that are available, the differences that we have, and they can come up with a path.
There she is, our darling little Nancy Pelosi.
The overwhelming reaction that I'm receiving is that the president talked about security in so many different ways, and he totally ignored the gun violence epidemic in our country.
Well, why don't we take a look at what's going on in Chicago or San Francisco? And the president did bring up the MS-13 gang member that was arrested for a shooting, killing someone on the subway. I think he did bring that up. And again, calling for unity. Did Barack Obama ever do this? Did Barack Obama ever call for unity?
My administration has sent to Congress a common-sense proposal to end the crisis on the southern border. It includes humanitarian assistance, more law enforcement, drug detection at our ports, closing loopholes that enable child smuggling, and plans for a new physical barrier or wall.
Your response next, 580-5436, 580-KIDO, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning. Thank you, Dave Ramsey. Don't forget, Dave Ramsey follows Glenn Beck, which follows us right here. So last night, the State of the Union, the president going on, and really, what did the American people think? Now we can play what the libs think, and we already know what the devious little libs think. They don't like it. They're against everything. They're negative Nellies. They're people that see the glass half empty. Well, you're going to love this one. This is from CBS. Remember the Tiffany Networks. CBS, the best ever. CBS, they report the news. CBS.
From our CBS News instant poll here following the President's State of the Union. 76% of speech watchers said they approved of what they heard. 72% said they approved of the president's ideas for immigration. But there were some controversial ideas there.
Oh, controversial ideas. So that's Jeff Glor, whatever. Can you hear? He just can't understand it. The media and the libs, even when confronted with their own data, sit back and try. They couldn't spin it because it just happened. He didn't see it until it actually was there. Boom. One more time.
From our CBS News instant poll here following the President's State of the Union, 76% of speech watchers said they approved of what they heard. 72% said they approved of the president's ideas for immigration.
And what were those ideas? Building a wall, empowering the Border Patrol, and the president last night revealing the Mexican government in Mexican cities are rounding up these caravan people and sending them to us. So he's sending 3,000 additional troops to save America. How in the world can anybody have a problem with that? He's exposing things that President Bush, President Obama, gleefully just look the other way. At 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Coming up, the liberal response. First, traffic and weather together.
Channel 7's Eric Gebert.
So Stacey Abrams, the failed Democratic candidate that had Oprah behind her in her race to be Georgia's governor, delivered the Democratic response. And when we're at Dave & Buster's, we're looking at it, we're going, what are all those people behind her? Are they like human shields? Are they, they're just standing there? They just have to stand there? To me, it looked like a pep rally at a high school. Anyway, the president saying the economy's booming. Let's put the partisanship behind and let's make America great again. Apparently, Ms. Abrams had an issue with that.
Even as I am very disappointed by the president's approach to our problems, I still don't want him to fail. But we need him to tell the truth and to respect his duties and respect the extraordinary diversity that defines America. Our progress has always been found in the refuge, in the basic instinct of the American experiment.
Sure.
To do right by our people.
The identity politics perpetrated by the left. Quickly to Patriot Ray with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, sir.
awesome evening it was last night. What awesome to hear a president who actually speaks the truth. And Abram, there's something really wrong with that lady because they do want him to fail. They don't want him to succeed because he's the only one telling the truth. He speaks the truth and they twist it another way. And because of the sheeple who just follow the Dems no matter what they do, they're just spinning it the way they want it, and they listen to it, and they cry and moan because they're not going to get their freebies that they always want from the Dems. And, you know, when a government gives you everything that you want, they can also take it all away, and you would just be a slave. So we're looking at trying to stop being slaves, but be free people like this government is intended to be. And now I understand that the New Mexico governor has pulled back the National Guard from the border. This is insane that these people do that when we know that there are people coming across that are killing people, that are trafficking people, who are raping individuals, who are just doing horrendous things to people. And Pelosi and her gang, when I watched Schumer last night and Pelosi shuffling through her papers, I could see the look in her eyes every once in a while, and she'd say, "Oh my gosh, did he really say that? How am I going to spin this?" Because they don't know what else to do. They've got to succeed in destroying him, and that's what they're doing. No matter what they say, they want him to fail, and they're doing the best they can at it. But you know what? The majority of the people are behind him, and CNN and CBS and the other acronym stations who sit back there and spin it their way, you know, they're going to lose too, because they are going to be the slaves when it finally ends up, if we lose this government. And when the president said we were a republic, I cheered, because he's one of the only ones that actually run around and say we're a republic like we're supposed to, instead of saying we're a democracy. And we are turning into a socialist country if we do not stand up for what is right and do the right things and be where we need to be, like last night when we were amongst a group of people who were like-minded and see the writing on the wall as things are going across. We need to be vigilant in being active in helping to fight these things. God bless you, Kevin, and Dave and Buster's for sponsoring that, for allowing us to come into their place last night and take part of this. What an awesome opportunity. This is the fourth or so that we've been able to do this at Dave and Buster's, and I am so grateful for that. And we're grateful to have you in the Valley. And as I met with people last night, I was hopeful that we will actually be able to turn the tide of what's going on in our country and do something about Pelosi and Schumer and the others who just block everything. And then they want to blame it on the president when they're the ones that are to blame with what's going on in this country. And they are to blame. And when she would not meet with the mothers of those who've been killed in her office, if that doesn't show you something to the American people, things like that need to be played over and over again, where she refuses to meet with people because it's not her narrative of things that she wants to happen. God bless you. Have a great day, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Patriot Ray. God bless.
God bless.
Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning, Kevin.
Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. More of your thoughts on the State of the Union, but locally, a big decision by the Idaho Supreme Court.
Matters before the court for oral argument.
At argument, the constitutionality of Proposition 2, Medicaid expansion, passed in November with about 60% of the vote. Idaho Freedom Foundation and its chairman brought the lawsuit forward, attempting to overturn what's now law.
If this court declares that the statute is unconstitutional, people are going to understand that and follow that.
IFF's attorney Brian Smith argued Medicaid expansion gives too much power to the federal government, allowing them to change eligibility requirements and the funding formula while stripping authority away from the legislature.
Then what does that mean for other Idaho statutes that are tied to a federal standard? In particular, I'm thinking of Idaho Code 44-1502 that deals with the minimum wage.
Haven't we already ceded that responsibility to the federal government? And aren't you suggesting then that Medicaid in its current iteration would be unconstitutional?
Defending the Secretary of State, Assistant Chief Deputy Attorney General Brian Kane argued there are procedural issues with the case.
There is no clear legal duty for the Secretary to remove a statute from the code.
Repeal of a statute is a legislative function.
Then the legislature is left with, is this good law or bad law? What are we going to do? So they're paralyzed, and then the people's will is also paralyzed.
An attorney for a group of people in the coverage gap and the Idaho Medical Association is siding with the state, saying Idaho is simply opting in and cooperating with the federal government.
Between those levels and 100%, there is no support for any kind of health care for those who are in that position. Creates the odd result of having virtually no place to go.
The AG argues the case is meritless, saying the Freedom Foundation didn't raise a single issue with legal foundation.
There's no delegation within the plain language of the statute to the federal government. It simply references a statute.
The court hasn't made a decision in this case, and there's no timeline they indicated as to when they could be done deliberating. Meanwhile, the state is asking the other side to pay reasonable attorney's fees.
There you have it. So looks like the Idaho Freedom Foundation will have to pony up some money. Now, it would be one thing to say, well, see, this is what happens when you fight the law wins. But we applaud the folks at the Idaho Freedom Foundation that made a run at this. You know, Medicaid expansion, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, is something that's going to impact all of us. And Senator Winder, in the Channel 7 report from yesterday that we aired on KIDO Talk Radio, very smart when he said this. Federal government right now funds at 90% federal, 10% state. Federal government at any time can switch that around. And considering the debt deficit issues we're in, we wouldn't be surprised if they pull the bait and switch. However, and I know there were some people that tried. I believe the Freedom Foundation tried very hard to derail Medicaid expansion. It's kind of like fighting against the government shutdown. The government shutdown, whether it's good or bad, you can't really fight in favor of people working for free. Sooner or later, they're going to get fed up. And Medicaid expansion, our whole medical infrastructure, and you don't need me to say this. You don't need somebody from St. Luke's or St. Al's to say this, or our friend Tommy Alquist to say this. It's broken. It is completely broken. And we can talk about the system before was a little better. But look, you went from uncaring, bean-counting HMOs to uncaring, bean-counting government bureaucrats to uncaring, bean-counting insurance companies. We're all impacted by this. We're all impacted by the insurance companies' needs to make a profit. So instead of getting you the medicine that works, they give you the prescription. And, oh, are you feeling faint? Are you having symptoms? Well, you better get back to your primary care physician, and you're going to have to pay more to get the medicine that your doctor prescribed for you. Where is, and I wish I could swear, where is President Obama and his plethora of lies when it comes to dealing with somebody that needs medicine? Their doctor says, you can get this medicine, but the insurance company says, that's too expensive, you can't afford it. I go back, and I will not say this, which hospital it was, but sleep apnea is a big problem, okay? Especially if you're a fatty like me. Now, one day, maybe soon, maybe not so soon, I'll once again try and don the tights, and we'll play the Rocky theme, and we'll do our very best to lose weight. Maybe we'll all do it together. No gimmicks, just meeting and trying to make that happen. And I've been blessed relatively with good health, except for the health that I have imposed on myself because I can't put down a chicken to feed my pie hole. So I go to this place, and I again, the person who saved my life was Liberal Steve. He was telling me about a CPAP machine and how it saved his life. I got tired of waking, and Brian from Nampa will attest to this. I got tired of, over the years, waking up in the middle of the night because I couldn't breathe. And so I went to a facility, and there was a young female doctor. I think she was in residency then. And, you know, being young has its advantages and has its disadvantages. It's intimidating talking to people. I was, 10, 20 years her senior. And so I said, look, I'd like the sleep study. I'm going to stay there and all this. And she goes, no, your insurance doesn't cover it. you get the home model, and you'll like it. Now, she didn't say I'd like it, and I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, I've paid for this stupid insurance. I've never used it. I don't go to the doctor when I get a cold, and I've got some medical bureaucrat telling me that I can't get proper treatment. And again, this is very small compared to people that have major surgeries and major health care concerns. So eventually I go pick up and I love the medical community. You need to do this. You need to take care of yourself. And yet you have to wait 3 months to get a CPAP test, or you have to wait 6 months to get into a colonoscopy place. Well, sorry, the doctor's schedule is a certain way. Or to go see a dermatologist. Well, that person only works 3 days a week. Really? Wow. And they give a rip about me? So building upon this, and I go talk to somebody else, and they say, man, that person was mistaken. They never should have said this. You can, sleep at the facility. No, I took the home test, and they took care of me. And again, I try to manage my health. And if you're one of these people that are, we talk about economic food insecurity, having a roof over your head insecurity, the idea of medical insecurity. And I wish that the Republicans had come up with a bleeping plan to do something. When we had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, we'd still have the House. And we still could make America great again. I hope that we can. And most of us, we go back to the ingenious campaign. There were two brilliant campaigns during the 2016 cycle here. 2018 cycle. We have documented Governor Little's run for the big house and how he did it. Things broke his way, but nobody outworked him. The other one would be Prop 2, Medicaid expansion. How can you argue when you have big money, special interest, telling people we've got $40 million of free money in Washington that we're not getting? And most of those people listen to music radio, are not educated, are ill-informed, and as our friend Chris Troupa said, they're too busy having a good time and not understanding that this is a representative republic. It's only as good as, how much we get involved in it, right? And if we don't get involved in it, we have the bureaucrats that take over, and that's what we fight every day. So Medicaid expansion wins, and the rest of us sit back and wonder what the heck happened, right? So now we have to deal with it. I go back to this campaign where they say, hey, we've got free money. Well, then they approve it, and the state legislature says, no, we don't have free money. The Freedom Foundation, God bless them, they do their very best. Their lawsuit goes down, and we're left with this.
Go enjoy your beer and ride your ATV and watch sports. We'll run the country.
Right. So going back to this, how are we going to pay for this Medicaid expansion? Well, that's why those folks were elected, number one. And number two, that does not give you an excuse not to repeal the grocery tax. Well, Kevin Miller, we don't have the money. Well, you need to come up with it. There are a lot of things. I was talking to a colleague here, a lot of things that he does at work he doesn't like to do, but that's the terms of employment. And maybe that should be our new term for people in Boise when it comes to dealing with things. Sir, that's the terms of employment when you run for office, when you put your signs on our yard, when you pollute the sides of streets because we're sitting there watching it. That's the terms of employment, ma'am. So here we have this at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. How to stop this? How to stop this Medicaid expansion? Looks like we can't do that. Now how to pay for it? That's the challenge. Your thoughts next to 580-5436, 580-KIDO, and reviewing the President's State of the Union speech, the best ever. We'd love to hear from you next. Kevin Miller, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Let's go to Max in Garden City with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Max.
Good morning, Kevin Miller. It was a terrific time last night, wasn't it?
A great time had by one and all.
A fantastic party, and the president's speech was so Reagan-esque, it really brought a tear to my eyes. He did a heck of a good job.
I would say.
And listen, I wanted to bring up liberal weasel Steve for just a moment. Steve, I know you're listening. And I remember you saying, and I'm going to quote you from last week, yeah, I'll meet with Max anytime, anywhere. We gave you a time. We gave you a win. We gave you the win. But you grew feathers. You jumped off the fence. Well, Steve, at least now you've confirmed the fact you're afraid of me. And that's good. That's very good. Be afraid. Be very afraid. Kevin, you keep up the really excellent job you're doing. And you know what? In Latin, they would say, illegitimatum carborundum est. And that would mean, don't let the wear you down. You're doing a good job. Don't listen so much to the negative. But as far as this medical thing, we need somebody to sit down and come up with a good idea. What we have doesn't work. What they want doesn't work. Now, I'm blessed because I go to the VA Medical Center. And the medical treatment I have received here in the last 2 years has been top flight, top notch, and on time. Now, if the VA can do that, why can't our state medical system model themselves on how the VA hospital runs here?
Great point, Max.
Other than that, keep on keeping on, and hello to everybody out there in the KIDO audience. I'll be talking to you again soon, and I'll even speak civilly to Steve.
Well, Steve is all straw and no hat, so he's going to lay low for a while.
Well, you know what? He's got to be afraid. Or he's just still so strung out from his last fix that he couldn't make it. And that's possible, in which case we pray for Steve.
Max, thank you for the call.
All righty, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This ain't the 80s. We ain't down with the ladies. It's 2010. We're down with Kevin Miller and the men.
Traffic and weather together, 107.5 FM. Mr. Pro. Let's go to John in Middleton on KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller. Good morning, John.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. I thought Trump looked like total boss up there last night. I loved it. And I just think so many of those Democrats watching were just shaking in their boots, wondering who can beat this man in 2020. They're going to have to really pull off some magic to do that because he did a great job last night. My favorite part was watching all those Democrat women in their white suits just getting totally triggered by when Trump was listing off all his accomplishments that benefit everybody, every race, every gender. They were squirming. They looked so uncomfortable. They were having face spasms. I thought that was hilarious. And it just shows very revealing how much they just hate America and hate the good that's benefiting everybody. They can't stand his success. And it was just very revealing. It was all over their face and their body language. So that's all I got. Thanks, Kevin. Have a great day.
Thank you, John. Have a great day. Appreciate you, brother. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. More of your phone calls coming up. And want to thank everybody who showed up at Dave & Buster's. Sometimes I know people get tired of us inviting people, but it was a record crowd last night, and it shows that the Treasure Valley still stands strongly behind our great president. We're just getting started. 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller in the morning. Fox News next.